Well, hello there. What's up? And today we're going to go over how to refactor a monolith Terraform configuration. So I have a ton of these, um, like my single server, for example. It's just one giant directory of stuff. And what you're going to find when you go to a company or you get brought on as a contractor or a consultant or whatever, or maybe you're just your company's getting started. Somebody's going to start building stuff, and maybe they know some Terraform and they know how to do a few things, but design is always an issue. So we're going to talk about refactoring your monolith into something a little more fun. So yeah, a lot of projects start out as a monolith, and you basically have a main configuration file and a single directory with a single state file. Some of the smaller stuff, it's kind of easy to do, but once things start growing, well, it gets a little harder to manage and you want to break it up into some logical units. It makes it a little less confusing and a little easier. So I made this directory called Monolith that we're going to use. And I'm going to go through a HashiCorp Learn tutorial that I will put a link in the description of this video so you can grab it and try it for yourself. But what I like to do is I like to go through these little learn tutorials or books and try their code. And what I find is sometimes it's just broken. So you have to kind of figure it out. So that's what we're going to do. So we're going to provision 2 instances of web app hosted in an S3 bucket that represent prod and dev. Configuration we're going to use will start as a monolith, and then we're going to modify it through some common phases of evolution. And each one's going to have its own independent configuration state. Should be pretty easy. We've kind of done this already with Project Omega when I have dev and prod and stage, and my stage has like all this separate stuff and whatever. So anyways, you'll need an AWS account. Make sure you have CLI installed, access, IAM permissions, all that stuff, and the Terraform CLI. Let's get started. All right, so first thing I'm gonna do is I'm gonna do a little git clone. So let's go to the right directory. Where am I? Let's go back one more. Let's go to my monolith. Yeah, and we're just gonna do a git clone of this HashiCorp Learn code organization. Let's do it. Cool. And here we are. So here's I've got an assets folder, I've got a mains, outputs, a readme, I've got a TF-vars example, and a variables file. Throughout the tutorial, you have the option to check out branches that correspond to version of Terraform config in that section. You can use it as a failsafe if your deployment is not working correctly, or to run the tutorial without making changes manually. So first thing, navigate to this directory, just like I did. And we've got all the things I just described. The main is configuring our resources of infra. Let's go take a look at what all this stuff is. Main. Let's see, I've got a HashiCorp AWS provider. I've got a var region, so my variables, my region. Here's a description, but there's not a value. All right. I'm not sure how that's supposed to go. We've got a resource, random pet name, length 3, separator. Interesting. So that's something that we have. We also have a bucket with a var dev prefix and a random pet name ID. And that is, of course, defined somewhere that does not exist. We've got this TF-vars example. Oh, so here's some vars we could use. And here's my bucket, public read. Here's an EOF. This is a bucket policy that they're sticking in there. It's saying public get read object effect allow on any principal to get an object so anybody can read it. And then I've got a website, index and error, force destroys true, and then there's another object here, dev, and it has some similar stuff. It has a file path module of index or of assets. So it's using this file path to create this static HTML page. Very cool. Let's see what else we got going on here. There's a prod bucket with similar issue. Yeah, so it's just creating 2 buckets, it looks like. And then yeah, and then our TFRs example has our variables in it. So let's go ahead and open up main. The random pet, let's go start with that. So this resource random pet, what the heck is this? It creates a string to be used as part of a unique name in your S3 bucket. So that's interesting. I never really thought about creating a string as a resource. Pet name is length 3 separator with a hyphen, and that's going to be our random pet name. Pet name, if you don't get the reference, is people who treat servers like pets instead of cattle, like they don't ever want to destroy them. Let's see, we got two AWS 3 buckets, prod and dev. Each create an S3 bucket with a read policy. We saw that. And two bucket object resources designated prod and dev, which load a file into the local assets directory using the built-in file function and upload it to your S3 buckets, which we saw here. Where are you at? Here. And I use a similar pattern for my, instead of content for buckets, I use that similar pattern for user data on EC2 instances. So we're going to open this little TFVars example, and we're going to edit it with our own variables. So I'm fine with this. I'm going to change this to US East 1 actually. Prod and dev, they look good to me. I'm in Colorado, so I can kind of pick whatever. Save. All right, so we save this, and we're going to rename this to get rid of the example. So if you have terraform.tfvars file, Terraform automatically loads variable values from any files that end in tfvars, by the way. So you could move it if you wanted to, be special. I just renamed it because, I like to party. And let's go ahead and initialize this sucker. So Terraform init. So let's see, we've got HashiCorp provider, a random provider, 3.26. That's an old one. 63 is the most recent. All right, and we got a good init. So that looks good. Then we're going to go ahead and apply. So let's do a Terraform apply. Now see this? See all these equal signs? It looks gross. I'm going to say yes. Go ahead and do that. I am going to format this sucker after we're done because that is just nasty. All right, and it's done. And there's our website endpoint, so we can go check this out. Before I do that, let's do a little Terraform format. Oh, that's better. Navigate to the web address from the Terraform output to display the deployment in a browser. Your directory now contains a state file, terraform.tfstate, which is true. And this is the state because we just didn't apply, so now we have a state file. Let's check out dev, this wonderful unsecure URL. Look at that. That's cool. Can I actually play this? Oh, I can play It's Tetris. No way. How do they put Tetris in an S3 bucket? Okay, you guys, this is really cool. This is just super cool. All right, well, we gotta play this until we get the big one, right? If you don't know what I'm talking about, then you've never lived. Where do I put this guy? Let's just stick this over here for now. You guys, this is already, I'm very impressed. How they managed to get this in an S3 bucket. I gotta look through this code. This is unbelievable. Well, now I gotta wait for two big ones. That may not have been the best use of my pieces, but we're gonna get there, and we're also not gonna lose. Oh my gosh, we got this. Oh, no, that's just mean. All right, we're gonna stick that there for now. What is this? Oh, come on, Judas. All right, we're just waiting. Okay, there it is. I just need one more. We got this. We got this. I bet you didn't know we were going to be playing Tetris. This is like my favorite thing that anybody could do. Bam! Oh, so cool. All right, I'm going to stop playing with that. So, coolest thing ever, definitely. We're gonna have to look at this index file and see what the hell this does, because that is the coolest thing ever. So now we have an issue. So in our monolith, we have all this really cool stuff, right? But look, it's just in this one giant monolith of a directory. So we want to define multiple environments in the same main TF file. That can get kind of hard to do too, because that TF file is going to get insanely long. It's meant to be readable, so we kind of want to keep it readable. So we're going to organize our config by separating it into two separate files, a root module for each environment. So there's going to be a main for each one. So to split this configuration, what we're going to do is we're actually just going to copy main.tf into dev.tf, and then we're going to copy main.tf to prod.tf. Okay, so that's the first thing we're going to do. So you see here now I got a main and a prod. Okay, so now we have two identical files. So if I look at dev, it's the same exact thing, but because now they're identical and we don't want them to be, we need to remove any references to prod by deleting the resource blocks of the prod ID. And then we'll go to prod and remove any references to dev. So let's go ahead and take a look. So good here, we're good here, that's fine. Okay, dev, this looks good. Here's a resource bucket. So that resource is good. Here's dev, that's our object, that's fine. Oop, prod, nope. Prod bad, so I'm just gonna look for this ending bracket here. Goodbye. And then our bucket object, we're also gonna get rid of that. Save. All right, so now we go to prod and do the inverse. So here's our dev bucket, and we're just gonna grab all that and the object and delete that, and we should be left with a random pet name, AWS, a prod bucket, and then a prod bucket object. Sweet, so now we have that done. Okay, so our directory structure now, we should have a README, an assets directory that has our index file, which is kind of cool that they just share the same asset. So it's like a global file, if you want to think of it that way. We got a dev, an outputs, a prod, a TF state file, a TF file, and a variables.tf. Looks good. So they're organized in environment-specific files. Our variables and TFVARs files contain variable declarations for both environments. So Terraform loads all config files within a directory and appends them together. So resources and providers with the same name, same directory can get a validation error. So if we run a Terraform command now, random pet resource and provider block will cause errors since they're duplicated across two files. Makes sense? So now we have to edit the prod file by commenting out the Terraform block and the provider block and the random pet resource. And we can comment out the configuration by adding a /* like this /* at the beginning of the comment out block. So let's take a look at what in the hell that looks like. So if we go, let's start with dev. We want to comment out this guy /*, right? And then at the bottom, it'll be //. So we want to comment out, it says Terraform block, the provider block, and the random pet block. So after random pet, I'm going to put //. So it really should just be your bucket and your bucket object. So let's go to prod and do the same thing. So let's add a line here, /*, and then go under random pet, */, and we should be left with a bucket and a bucket object. Sweet. So with our prod TF shared resource comments out, our prod environment will still inherit the value of random pet resource in our dev TF file. So is this, oh, so we don't want to do this in dev. We just want to do it in prod. I misread that. Save. So because dev has it, that's not what I wanted to do. Because dev has this declared, it's going to read this from everywhere. Then at least it was used once and it was declared in here, then we should have it everywhere. Which is why prod will be able to read it and we don't need to declare it twice. Hence creating two different values of the same resource name. That's why. So that should work. Let's do a little validation here. and get rid of this little line. Let's do Terraform format because I'm super anal. Let's do it just a Terraform validate. Oh, look at this. Okay, so we got some duplicates. In main.tf. Okay, well that's because we don't want main.tf. Can I go ahead and just... Didn't say I should delete this, but I should delete this. Maybe it did, but I missed it. We're going to delete this. Bye, Felicia. All right, so now let's try again. Validate. Sweet. All right, now we don't have any duplicates. We are cooking with gas, you guys. All right, so now for fun, it's going to have us simulate a hidden dependency. You may want your development and production environments to share bucket names, but the current configuration is particularly dangerous because of the hidden resource dependency built into it. Imagine that you want to test a random pet name with 4 words in dev. In dev.tf, update random pet's resources linked attribute to 4. All right. That's done. Save. You might think you are only updating the dev environment because you only changed dev.tf, but remember this value is referenced by both prod and dev resources. True. So this resource, when it gets created, I've got this length here as 4, but you'll notice that like these buckets use these resource IDs in order to pass variables. So because there's inferences in here, implicit values, it's definitely going to mess something up. Let's run a Terraform apply and see what happens. Refreshing, refreshing, refreshing. Okay, so it says, note that the operation updated all 5 of your resources by destroying and recreate them. In this scenario, you encountered a hidden resource dependency because both bucket names rely on the same resource. So when I say hidden, it means you didn't really know about it, but you'll notice that it's going to update like freaking everything. We're going to hit yes because it says to. So carefully review the Terraform execution plan before applying them. If an operator does not carefully review the plan output, or if CI/CD pipelines automatically apply changes, you may accidentally apply breaking changes to your resources. So it's destroying stuff. It's going to create new stuff. Should be pretty quick though, because they're just buckets. And then we're just going to destroy our resources before we move on, is what it wants us to do. And then we're going to create some separate states. Okay, well, that was fun. Terraform destroy. Okay, so now let's get into separate states while it's doing that. Previous operation destroyed both prod and dev environments. When working with monolithic configuration, you can use Terraform apply command from the with the -target flag to scope resources to operate on. That approach can be risky and is not a sustainable way to manage distinct environments. For safer operations, you need to separate your dev and prod state. Yeah, I don't like using workspaces and I don't like using flags, especially as an operator. So like if you, the Terraform operator, are sitting here typing stuff, it's so easy to mess things up and make a mistake. So I'm not a huge fan. So state separation signals more mature usage of Terraform. With additional maturity coming additional complexity. There are 2 primary methods to separate state between environments, directories and workspaces. I hate workspaces. Please tell me we're not doing that. To separate environment with potential configuration differences, use a directory structure. Use workspaces with environments that do not greatly deviate from one another to avoid duplicating your configurations. Try both methods. Okay, so check this out. If you use Terraform workspace show, it says I'm using the default. Because I'm in VS Code, it also tells me I'm on my master branch. You'd have to double check every time you ran anything. What workspace am I in? And I absolutely hate doing that. It's like having to double check what branch you're on every single time you're trying to do something. And there's just it to me, it's just I don't like doing it compared to just having completely different directories because at least I can see the directory. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to create separate directories. We can shrink the blast radius of our Terraform operations and ensure we only modify intended infra. So Terraform will store the state files on disk and their corresponding configuration directories and only operate on the state config in the working directory by default. All right, so now what we're going to do is we have assets directory in that same part of the tree under this Learn Terraform code, I'm going to create a new folder called prod, and I'm going to create another folder called dev. Then what I'm going to do is we're just going to, oh man, it's having me do all kinds of stuff. All right, so let's do a move dev to dev main. So instead of having it named dev.tf, it's just going to be the main.tf in the dev folder. Okay, and then we're going to copy the outputs, tf vars, and variables.tf into the dev folder. And then our environment directories are now one step removed from the assets folder where web app lives. It doesn't say, oh yeah, it does later. We have to open the main file in dev right here. In a text editor, edit the file to reflect the change by editing the file path and the content argument. Okay, let's go check that out. Where is my content argument? Resource, content, where are you? Content, file path, I see. So here what we want is, instead of assets, we want /assets. Same thing. So the bucket object resource before this, because we want it to go back a directory, because it's in dev, we want it to go back a directory first and then read assets. Okay, that makes sense. So we need to remove the reference to prod environment from dev config files. So in our outputs, there's going to be a dev and a prod, so we can get rid of the prod output. And then in our variables, we've got a prod prefix. We can get rid of that. And that is gone. And then in our TF vars, we can get rid of prod because we don't need it anymore. And then we need to do the same thing for prod. So let's move prod to prod main. And then let's copy all of our output files, Terraform vars, and variables. And then we basically need to repeat the same steps. So let's open prod, let's go to main, let's go down here, and then let's go back a directory first, go to outputs, let's get rid of all the dev stuff. And then let's go to TF vars, let's get rid of the dev stuff. Got it, let's go to variables, let's get rid of the dev stuff. And then that should be it. Yep. And then we now can uncomment in main this because it's not already declared anymore. And now I can have random pet 3, which is kind of cool. And it can be 4 in dev, and it doesn't matter. All right, so now we need to deploy these environments. So how in the heck do you do that? Well, it's kind of like doing what we already did, except we need to do it per directory. So now I'm in dev, and I'm going to initialize my Terraform config inside the dev directory. Okay, so now they're like separate places. All right, so let's run a Terraform apply, and this is going to be our development environment. Barring any typos, we should have a totally different dev environment that gets created because I destroyed everything before we started again. And then we'll just do the same thing in prod. So let's go back and then go into prod and then initialize our environment. It's using AWS 3.63. Thank you very much. And let's do a Terraform apply. And see, now I can just see it's in prod. I like doing directories. I'm not a workspace fan at all. Some people love them. You do you. Now, they all have their own configuration, and they all work. And I can go to prod and be like, hey, let's see prod in action. Boom, it works. Sweet. That's awesome. That's so cool. I love that they made Tetris in there. So yeah, so what did we just do? So we just took a monolithic application that inside of this directory, if I go back one, you see I'm in the, I'll even go back another one. I'm in the monolith directory that I created, and then I'll go into this Git repo that I pulled down, and I no longer have all that extra stuff that was in there. In fact, I could get rid of, I mean, I can get rid of the README if I wanted to, but the assets has the index.html file, which is used by both applications, both environments. But now my dev has its own main outputs, tfstate, tfvars, tffile, and that tfstate's important because this is the state of my development environment. And we can see a difference because you can see, for example, that the pet name has a length of 4, whereas my state file and prod, we're going to see that my pet name has a length of 3. So they're completely unique. They have completely different states, and both states are managed in completely separate directories. Now, if you haven't seen any of my videos on a remote state, the next thing I would do once this was all done is I would move these state files out from here into a backend S3 bucket and then have all the locking done in DynamoDB if I was in AWS, or you can push it up to Terraform Cloud or wherever you feel like doing it. But that's it. So this Refactor monolithic Terraform configuration example in the HashiCorp Learn thing was super smooth, didn't have any errors, no issues. And you get to play Tetris, guys, so you should go check that out. But so if you're trying to start with a monolithic, it doesn't even have to be an app, just a monolithic Terraform configuration of a multi-tier app. And you have questions, let me know. I love doing this kind of stuff and doing just design of the layout of everything and making it super organized and making it secure. You could have separate AWS CLI credentials for each one. You can throw Sentinel policies in here to allow restrictions for certain instance types and budgets and all that stuff and super fun stuff. So yeah, start to apply all the things that we're doing into these projects, and uh, I'll go ahead and pull up another one. But I hope you enjoyed that. Definitely build it and go play some Tetris, if nothing else. And I guess I'll see you guys in the next one.